Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Congresswoman Cori Bush. I have the honor and the privilege of representing St. Louis, which is Missouri's first district in the United States Congress. And it is truly an honor and incredibly exciting for me to stand alongside colleagues and activists, advocates, and movement leaders who are at the forefront of championing an affirmative approach to community safety, one that invests in evidence-based public health approaches to preventing and addressing violence in our communities, an approach that saves lives. That's what the community safety agenda, that's what it's about. I want to thank Representative Ayanna Pressley and Rep. Katie Porter, who I believe is on the way, for being with us and for your leadership on vital community safety legislation, just always. So thank you, Rep. Pressley, my sister in service. I also want to thank the Community Safety Working Group and all of our advocacy partners who are tirelessly pushing for policies that save lives. And a special shout out to Color of Change, the Futures Institute, Movement for Black Lives, Equal Justice USA, Moms Rising, Bend the Arc, March for Our Lives, and so many other organizations from the movement that are here today with us in spirit. Today, I stand before you as a politivist. I'm going to always be the activist, but I am also now the politician. And as Congress's first activist directly from the movement to save Black lives, our vision for an affirmative approach to public safety was born out of the Ferguson uprising in response to the killing of Michael Brown. And it continues to echo through the streets in response to so many more murders like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many other precious lives lost or permanently altered due to our country's failed approach to public safety. Our movement demands transformative changes to our government's approach to public safety. That means not only ending the status quo of police brutality and mass incarceration, but also channeling massive investments into systems of care that are rooted in improving the well-being of our communities. One of my greatest privileges continues to be bringing this movement from the streets to the halls of Congress. And that is exactly the intention behind the People's Response Act, which we worked on with these groups, which I also lead alongside Representative Pressley, Pramila Jayapal, Jan Schakowsky, Summer Lee, and Morgan McGarvey. The People's Response Act is a love letter to our movement, activism in legislative form. It creates a new agency within the Department of Health and Human Services, the Division on Community Safety, which would research and fund life-saving alternatives to incarceration and policing. It is located in the HHS because we know that public safety is a public health issue. And the solutions to public safety must also be rooted in public health. This division would create much-needed community safety infrastructure in the federal government. It would have the power to nurture community-led, health-based investments in public safety. The grant programs funded by this bill will go to community health workers, non-carceral crisis response units, mental health professionals, violence interruption and prevention programs, mediation programs, safe passage to school programs, housing security, support for youth and families, and so much more. We know these programs work because they are already helping our communities every single day. Programs like the Purple Shirts in St. Louis, which sends behavioral health workers to handle mental health, domestic violence, drug overdose, and trespassing calls. Programs like Denver Star, which also send non-police first responders to help people experiencing mental health distress and substance use disorders. And just so many other organizations and groups which prioritize community violence intervention in cities around the country. And they are popular. They are popular because the public knows we cannot incarcerate ourselves to safety. We need affirmative investments in health and in well-being, and we need to ensure that these interventions support the communities with the greatest need. Communities that are directly impacted by mass incarceration, by police violence, gun violence, the unhoused crisis, deportation and immigration detention, domestic violence, rape and other forms of sexual assault, racist violence, transphobic violence, and other harms. These programs are even popular, and let me say it, So people are clear, it's popular with law enforcement. And I'm saying that because I've heard directly from police chiefs in my district who want to save lives, who are trying to be the change, and other chiefs elsewhere that are not only speaking up about mental health issues and incidents, but they're saying that this is the number one issue that they are responding to. They need these investments. They're coming to me in my office and asking, how can we secure more dollars for these types of programs? Not MRAPs and militarized weapons.
That's right.
So what is extraordinary about the People's Response Act is that it's not just legislation. It is a centerpiece of a movement that grows larger and larger every single day. Each of my colleagues and all of the advocates here today are standing together. And my colleagues, Rep. Pressley, I think I saw Katie Porter, Rep. Porter, we have introduced all of our own bills that effectively center care over criminalization. We need the People's Response Act, and we also need Rep. Presley's Counseling Not Criminalization in Schools Act. We need Rep. Garcia's Opening Doors for Youth Act. We need Rep. Porter's Mental Health Justice Act. We need fresh approaches to any and all policies that save lives and keep our community safe. That's what the community safety agenda is about. These bills are more than just legislation. They reflect a movement that's rooted in evidence-based approaches to public safety that ensure the safety of individuals, families, and communities. You can't just go around killing black folks with impunity anymore. I'm honored to work alongside these extraordinary lawmakers and advocates in this struggle. Know that your Congresswoman, you all, loves you. I take everybody just like I know my sisters do. We love you, and we won't stop fighting and pushing until this agenda becomes the law of the land. This agenda is what everybody understands and expects. The safety of every single person, every family, every community member, and we need that to become a reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Next we will have Representative Katie Porter from California.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
I'm Congresswoman Katie Porter from Orange County, California, and it's great to be here with all of these amazing voices and advocates to talk about why we need a community safety agenda, to talk about the progress we have made and all of the work that remains to be done. When we think about community safety, we often think about first responders, the police, the firefighters, the paramedics that respond when someone calls 911. But who responds when people are in a healthcare crisis, a mental health crisis? Mm-hmm. It is no secret that our first responders, most often law enforcement, are not adequately trained to respond to mental health crises. They don't have the experience of providing mental health interventions, and too often, people who need care are treated like criminals.
that's right.
This gap in training and experience is why we have a deep need for a fourth category of responders: mental health professionals, social workers, and crisis counselors.
Yeah.
Just last month, police in Southern California, fatally shot and killed a teenager with a disability when responding to a 911 call. Tragedies like this are completely unacceptable. When people call 911 for a loved one in a mental health crisis, they are desperately searching for care, not a death sentence. Since 2015, one in five fatal police shootings ended the life of an individual struggling with mental illness. 1 in 5. That is hundreds of people who could be alive and thriving. Today, if we had taken a public health, evidence-based approach to get people help, not handcuffed.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
My Mental Health Justice Act would give communities across this country the opportunity to take this approach by providing grants to hire, train, and dispatch mental health professionals to resolve crisis situations. We cannot and should not put this work on law enforcement. We should give people in the community what they need, a care provider. Having the right type of responders for mental health emergencies will make our communities safer. It will reduce the strain on our criminal justice system and stop distracting law enforcement from what Americans need them to do, which is to fight crime. Some cities and states already have mental health first responder units, and they work. In Oregon, a crisis team answers dozens of calls a day, sending care workers instead of police to help individuals in need. And Los Angeles just started a new program modeled off Oregon's to respond to mental health emergencies and welfare checks across the city. We even have this program in Orange County, California. And if you can do it there in Huntington Beach, you can do it anywhere in America. We know that alternative responders reduce harm and connect patients directly to care, and that Congress can put them in every community in America. Here's some good news. We are getting closer to making this a reality. In 2022, the Mental Health Justice Act passed the House of Representatives on a bipartisan basis. Last year, I introduced an even better version of the bill that would give communities guidance and best practices to implement their own local programs. We would also study how effective these grant programs are so that Americans know that these programs not just save lives, they save tax dollars, they work. Even in this Congress, this divided Congress, we have broad coalitions of support. As of today, we have 113 bipartisan co-sponsors of the Mental Health Justice Act. That is more than 1/4 of the House of Representatives. So I urge the Speaker, my colleagues in the majority, to prioritize bringing this legislation and the legislation of my colleagues here today to the floor for a vote. Together, we can make our communities safer. Thank you so much for inviting me here today, for all of your amazing advocacy in your work. It's my honor to stand with you. Thank you so much. And I am now going to introduce my amazing sister, Representative Ayanna Pressley.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Before I get to my prepared remarks, my father is very heavy on my mind. For those of you who don't know, my father, a very successful professor and published author, but he is a survivor of mass incarceration. My father cycled in and out of the criminal legal system for most of my life because of a wrongful conviction at one point. But for most of those years, he was incarcerated because he committed crimes to support substance use disorder. And what my father deserved was on-demand treatment and culturally competent care. My father, because of the black maternal morbidity crisis, which has been plaguing this country since the 1950s, he and his 5 siblings were orphaned when my grandmother, Grandma Carrie, went to give birth to his youngest brother. Mama never came home from the hospital. And that sent my father and his siblings into a chaotic and downward spiral. And like many black children, he was adultified early on, especially as the eldest. And so through substances, he sought to self-medicate. So I just wanted to take this moment to say, in the words of the great Angela Y. Davis, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. Instead, I'm changing the things I can no longer accept. And that we must break the cultural tradition of this country of treating trauma with more trauma. And I just wanted to say, for all the years that our family was destabilized and the shame and the stigmatization that I carried for my father's incarceration, and I wanted to lift that up because it's not just the individual. Entire families and communities are impacted by that. And as I said, he is a survivor of mass incarceration. And I just wanted to lift up that powerful, brilliant black man that is my father, Martin Terrell. Okay, good afternoon, Movement family. You are a beautiful sight to behold. It is good to be here today, surrounded by such a broad and diverse coalition. This is where we would much rather be. With change makers, people who want to do the work of change, changing and saving lives, yes, justice seekers and movement builders. Behind every movement in our nation's history, organizers like you have led the way in dismantling racist systems of oppression and pushing our nation to center the dignity and humanity of all people. And it is an honor to be in this fight alongside you. It is an honor to be in this fight alongside my sister in service, Cori Bush, who from the moment she landed here, I always say she's not new to this, she's true to this. And she brought those organizing principles and tactics, having us occupy the Capitol steps, had never been done in history, in the name of housing justice. And I'm grateful for her agitating, her activism, and her brilliance, and the many ways in which she pace sets. Similarly, I thank Representative Katie Porter, an innovative lawmaker and a sister in solidarity on so many issues of conscience and consequence. And again, I thank all of you, the Community Safety Agenda, and all of our advocates. And I also want to thank Rep. Garcia for their partnership. For too long, America's flawed approach to public safety has centered criminalization, surveillance, and incarceration rather than care, justice, and healing. We're talking about a policing system that lets law enforcement brutalize and murder Black and brown folks with impunity, a legal system that treats addiction with incarceration instead of compassion, and an education system that criminalizes normal adolescent behavior and puts our most vulnerable students on a pathway to confinement. One thing is clear: the status quo was fundamentally unjust and must be changed. That's why we're here today, to continue building momentum and calling on Congress to be responsive to our movement by taking up and passing critical legislation like the Counseling Not Criminalization in Schools Act, the People's Response Act, the Mental Health Justice Act, and more. I am proud to co-lead each of these bills, and I'm so proud to have the strong support of the Community Safety Agenda and over 70 grassroots organizations across the country. And I'm especially proud to see the Counseling Not Criminalization in Schools Act gain the support of this broad coalition. I first introduced this bill in July 2020 to disrupt the school to confinement pathway and to put an end to the over-policing of our K-12 schools. Our bill would prohibit the use of federal funds for police in schools and instead invest in the critical trauma-informed staff like counselors, nurses, and social workers who actually make our schools safer. We've invested millions in school police when 90% of our students cannot even access a social worker, a school nurse, or a counselor. We need police-free schools because for too many young people, especially Black and brown students, immigrant students, students with disabilities, LGBTQ students, and other historically marginalized students, the very presence of police officers in schools increases the likelihood that they will be suspended, referred to law enforcement, and arrested in school. We need police-free schools because we have seen how the harsh, zero-tolerance discipline policies in schools across the country have been disproportionately weaponized against our most vulnerable. Before I was in Congress, working with my good doctor, Dr. Monique Culveson, formerly Morris, I came and testified at the Department of Education, Civil Rights Division, and come to find out that out of the 9 categories of discipline, 6 of them were dominated by Black girls. So Black girls face greater rates of police harassment and violence while in school, often just for how we show up in the world. We need police-free schools because in my home state of Massachusetts, Black girls are 4 times more likely to be arrested than white girls. This is not simply a disparity, it is a disgrace. This is not just an inequity, this is a crisis in and of itself. So we must be intentional about confronting it head on and advancing policies and budgets that promote trauma-informed learning environments where our students can learn, thrive, free from fear, where instead of an educator saying, "What's wrong with you?" they ask, "What happened to you?" I'm so grateful to everyone here today for their partnership in transforming our criminal legal system that is literally killing our people. Today, we can no longer accept the status quo in America. The moment we're in calls for transformative legislation to dismantle systems of oppression wherever they exist, and we must meet the moment. Okay. So And I'm going to do it one more time. I know we're, but it's important, though. But we want to thank Color of Change, the Futures Institute, Movement for Black Lives Action Fund, Equal Justice USA, Moms Rising, Bend the Arc, and March for Our Lives. And so now I think I'll bring to the podium Color of Change.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey.
My name is Michael Huggins. I'm the Deputy Senior Director of Policy and Government Affairs at Color of Change. On behalf of Color of Change, I am so proud and so honored to be a part of the Community Safety Working Group and to support the 2024 Legislative and Appropriations Agenda. Despite the evidence that punitive interventions make us less safe, we continue to see more of these old, stale, tough on crime tactics being used and endorsed in our communities. Many individuals have even gone as far to convince our communities that more police means more safety. But we know that more police and more funding for police will not keep our communities safe. It is time to shift this thinking and promote more alternatives and to promote more tactics that are proven to be effective. We are also proud to be supporters of the People's Response Act. The PRA, or the People's Response Act, emphasizes an inclusive, holistic, and health-centered approach to public safety by creating a division within the Department of Health and Human Services because communities and experts agree that public safety is a matter of public health, 100%. The PRA provides the resources and assistance to scale up inclusive, holistic, and health-centered approaches by transforming public safety in the United States. We need to invest more in community health, alternative crisis response, violence prevention, safe and affordable housing, economic stability, more resources for education in our young people, and our community infrastructure. We can't wait to work with so many of you all on endorsing and continuing to uplift this agenda on both the legislative side and the appropriations side. We're so excited to be working with members of Congress and making sure that our communities are truly safe. So I really want to thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Color.
And the next person is Thea Sebastian.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Thea, and I am the Executive Director of the Futures Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing affirmative approaches to community safety across the country. As a teacher, I wanted nothing more than to keep my students safe. Safe from violence, safe from harm, safe from the housing insecurity, food insecurity, and economic uncertainty in their lives. I failed. I failed because not even the best lesson plan could put a roof over their heads, put food on their tables, support their mental health, or prevent violence in their communities. But this failure also explains why I stand here now and why I couldn't be more excited about the two agendas being unveiled today. This community safety agenda represents a set of multidisciplinary investments that would create real safety in our communities, not through policing and through punishment, but by addressing the root causes of violence and harm. The 17 bills in this agenda touch nearly every issue that evidence shows to prevent violence and effectively, appropriately manage crises. Through the Mental Health Justice Act, we have a bill that would send trained professionals to manage crises that stem from mental health or substance use, helping all people to receive the care that they need. Through the Breaking the Cycle of Violence Act, we have a bill that would invest deeply in community violence intervention, programs that head off violence before it happens. Through the Counseling Not Criminalization in Schools Act, we have a bill that would invest deeply in school counselors, trauma-informed supports for students, and the other investments that will truly keep our kids safe and that my kids so desperately needed when I was in the classroom. Through the Opening the Doors to Youth Act, we have a bill that would invest deeply in summer jobs and in youth employment, one of our most effective tools for reducing violence and harm in our communities, while boosting the lifetime earnings and opportunities of young folks. And through the People's Response Act, in many ways, the heart of this community safety agenda, we have a bill that would invest in all of these life-saving interventions while building the institutional architecture, this new division of community safety within the Department of Health and Human Services that can sustain and appropriately administer these investments over time. These bills, along with the 12 others that you can find in our agenda, are the policy solutions that people everywhere crave, the common sense approaches that save money, save lives, and avoid the devastating harms of punitive approaches that leave too many people less safe. As a teacher, I wanted what every single person wants: to keep their kids safe, their family safe, and their community safe. I couldn't achieve this goal within my classroom, but through this agenda and alongside the incredible lawmakers and the advocates who are all represented here now, I finally have a chance to do so. Over this next year, I look forward to working with all of you and the more than 90 organizations that have endorsed this agenda and support our Community Safety Working Group toward making these policy changes a reality and toward building the new evidence-based paradigm that will actually keep our kids and communities safe. And I just want to say that this is a moment where it can be hard sometimes to find notes of hope and optimism when you are fighting on these issues around justice. But I just want to say that if you need some inspiration, just look at all these folks here. Look at the members who came out to support this agenda today, because in so many ways, this press conference is evidence that we are already winning. We are already putting together a framework that can actually create the paradigm that we all believe in and that we know will most effectively help our communities. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and I would love to hand it over now to Ben the Arc.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rabbi Jason Kimmelman Block. I'm the Washington Director for Bend the Arc Jewish Action. This coming Monday night is the first night of Passover, when we retell the incredible story of the Exodus from Egypt. The Egypt of Pharaoh was one based on domination and oppression, where people were dehumanized to be cogs in a machine, where fear of loss of power caused the murder of the most vulnerable, the drowning of babies. The Exodus reminds us that no matter how powerful rulers are, how powerful the culture, no matter how thriving the economy, that there is a greater power. And that power has many names, and it loves people, wants to see them thrive in community, and is pained by their oppression.
That's right.
And a society that takes that vision seriously is one that must reject the oppressive systems that dehumanize and commit violence against people. And it must build systems that sustain human lives and communities. And I'm here to speak about the People's Response Act and the full community safety agenda. These are the most important visionary transformational pieces of legislation that's been introduced in Congress. The PRA, under the leadership of Representative Cori Bush, who we just heard from. Bend the Arc and our multiracial, multi-ethnic Jewish community supports the PRA because it's long past time to stop pouring tax dollars into harmful enforcement-based systems that are rooted in white supremacy and don't deliver safety for all of us. It's time to fund the programs that will actually support the safety of Black, brown, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ, disabled people, including Jews who live at many identity intersections.
That's right.
Join us as we work to transform this society that is in desperate, desperate need of transformation. Thank you.
That's right. That's right.
And now I would like to introduce the Movement for Black Lives Action Fund.
All right. Welcome, 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 freedom fighters, advocates. So grateful for our champions, Representative Cori Bush, for leading us in this challenge to ensure that we pass common sense, right? Common sense legislation. The People's Response Act is the most common sense legislation that we have seen to date.
Yeah.
And we desperately need it, as our brother Ben just said, right? So in response to the sustained and increasingly visible violence against Black communities, let me first start by saying I'm Rukia Lumumba. I'm with the Movement for Black Lives. Woo! And I am joined by our local partner, Afeni Evans, with Life After Release and Harriet's Wildest Dreams, DC based, right? And so, in response to the sustained and increasingly visible violence against Black communities in the U.S. and globally, a collective of more than 50 organizations representing thousands of Black people from across the country came together in 2015 to build a common vision for a freer future, a vision for Black lives. When the people rose up in 2020, the vision for Black lives became the basis of the BREATHE Act. So I'm gonna give you a little history. A visionary bill to divest our taxpayer dollars from brutal and discriminatory policing and invest in a new vision of public safety. One that prioritizes Black wellness through community-based and led mental health services, conflict resolution, addiction recovery, and the overall support of Black healing. Today, the BREATHE Act serves as the Movement for Black Lives Action Fund's blueprint for legislation that brings us closer to that vision of safety for everyone. As the first piece of federal legislation that is fully inspired by the BREATHE Act, the People's Response Act, also known as the PRA, together with several other critical BREATHE-aligned bills, will advance the non-carceral model for community safety that we are seeking to build. Black people have long demanded a new future, a new policy mandate for our safety. In 2022, police killed more people than any year in U.S. history. There is strong, clear support among Black Americans for investing in evidence-informed community safety solutions, especially those that would center de-escalation, mental health support, and approaches that do not rely on punishment or policing. M4BL and Gen Forward's People's Perspectives on Community Safety for Black America report, released in November of 2023, surveyed a representative sample of 3,600 Black people to gauge their perspectives on and experiences with community safety and policing. This report revealed that 88% of Black Americans support hiring mental health professionals as non-police first responders to de-escalate mental health crises. And 89% of Black Americans support investing in communities, organizations that address local safety needs. The data is clear, y'all. Black people know we must divest from policing and invest instead in public safety solutions. We can innovate new approaches to security and accountability that better serve the needs of all people without creating massive gaps in our crises response.
That's right.
The bills within the community safety legislative agenda offer a practical, common sense approach to ending the cycle of police violence, mass incarceration, and criminalization by providing adequate, health-based, trauma, and evidence-informed responses for our communities' needs during crises. I'm gonna pass it to my sister, Afeni.
Right.
What's up, y'all? My name is Afeni. Like Rukia said, I'm the director of Organizing Life After Release, and we're a proud member of the Movement for Black Lives. We're here in support of the People's Response Act because we have tried all the solutions that the establishment has provided to us. We tried funding the police harder and providing them with more training, yet in 2015, 27% of police shootings involved some sort of mental health crisis. We tried diversifying the police force. Here in Chocolate City in D.C., 60% of MPD are black people. Yet 87% of the people that they arrest are black people. 97% of the people that are in D.C. jail are black people. In 2021, we won hard-fought reforms barring deadly police chases because of the state-sponsored killings of Karan Hilton Brown and Jeffrey Price. And the D.C. Council just passed an omnibus bill that peels back all of those reforms. We try these solutions even though we know that police only solve 11% of crime nationally. We know that 1 in 3 black men can be expected to be killed by the police or incarcerated in this country. We tried these solutions, even though there is no clear evidence that more police means less crime. We tried it your way, and now it is time for solutions that are led by the people. Solutions that center humanity. Like my good sis just said, 88% of black Americans support mental health professionals to be first responders. 89% of black Americans support investment in community organizations to address local public safety issues. These are your constituents, Democratic Party.
Talk to him.
Our communities have entrusted congressional representatives to legislate on our behalf. They must listen to the people, and the People's Response Act is one step of many that we should take to make our communities safer, because we know that resources keep our communities safe. We know that compassion keeps our people safe. And we know that we, the people, keep us safe. And communities across the country have demanded that we create real safety for us, by us. And we intend to make that reality. Thank you.
That's right. That's right.
And so we're going to call up March of Our Lives, Alex Dillon. Okay. Side.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for having me. My name is Alex Dillon, and I'm a member of March for Our Lives and a student at American University. I want to thank the over 70 organizations that we work with within the Community Safety Working Group for their never-ending commitment to reimagining public safety and fighting for our lives, especially young people's lives. Classrooms across America should serve as a place to ignite the curiosity and imagination of our students. Schools should be a place full of excitement and opportunity. However, for our generation, they have become a place where we fear for our lives, hide under our desks, and ask ourselves whether we'll be next. On top of that, our leaders in Congress fail to act. Although guns continue to be the #1 killer of young people, more than car accidents and cancers, in 2023 there was no federal legislation passed on gun reform. And when our leaders do propose reforms, they're often outdated and reactive. For far too long, the response to school shootings and gun violence in our schools has too often relied on ineffective interventions that result in trauma and incarceration. Schools are increasing the number of police officers present, erecting metal detectors, implementing zero-tolerance policies, and recently in Tennessee, they passed a bill to arm teachers. These so-called strategies are reactive policies that do not only not prevent violence, but shift who is perpetrating it. From Parkland to Uvalde, the evidence is clear. Increasing the amount of weapons in schools is ineffective, dangerous, and creates a pipeline that funnels students from schools to the brutally violent and discriminatory criminal legal system, which disproportionately harms students of color, LGBTQ+ students, and students with disabilities. Relying on such punitive measures fails to address the mental health crises that students are facing and exacerbates inequities within the criminal legal system. This can have detrimental effects on the future of students and further discriminates against students from marginalized communities. In order to confront the mental health crises that students are facing, schools must invest in their students instead of carceral programs. This means investing in school counselors, social workers, psychologists, and other personnel who put the needs of their students first. We must prioritize the academic well-being and success of students rather than relying on solutions that invoke trauma and anxiety. By increasing the number of support personnel, we can ensure that students have access to the academic, social, and mental health support they need to succeed, rather than being funneled towards prisons and other punitive measures. With the increased need for counseling and other mental health resources in schools, we must reform how we invest in our schools. Since 1999, the federal government has invested more than $1 billion in increasing the number of police in our schools, yet there has been little effect on the safety of students. At March for Our Lives, we believe we need a new evidence-based solution that focuses on a safe environment for learning and self-growth, rather than incarceration and punishment. For that reason, we support the Counseling, Not Criminalization in Schools Act and the People's Response Act, two bills which will reform how we invest in our schools by drawing on evidence-based solutions that focus on fostering an environment of learning and take a proactive approach to preventing violence in our schools. These bills emphasize the importance of ending the school-to-prison pipeline and other measures that seek to militarize our schools and further discriminate against marginalized students. It is crucial, now more than ever, that we support solutions that invest in the academic and social success of our students, which is why I urge you to support the People's Response Act and the Counseling, Not Criminalization Act. March for Our Lives and young people across the country are determined to live to see a world where our schools are safe places for children to learn, grow, and receive the help they need to live and thrive. Our students deserve better. Thank you.
That's right.
Now I would like to bring up here Equal Justice USA.
JUSA.
Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to the women, to the sisters. Y'all have been holding us down in communities, our families, for generations, and to see the leadership that we now have here in Washington, D.C. is just beautiful, and thank you for that. So good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today on a set of critically important issues facing our country, the need for investment into non-carceral solutions that tackle the root causes of violence, solutions that we know work. And I'm gonna say that again, solutions that work. My name is William Simpson, and I serve as the Director for Community Safety and Justice at Equal Justice USA. Before I discuss the bills and the agenda, let me share a story that underscores the urgency of why we're here today. This is a story of Najee Seabrooks, a young man from Paterson, New Jersey, not much different in age than myself. Najee dedicated his life to the Paterson Healing Collective, tirelessly working to mend the fabric of his community through intervention and healing. But tragically, Najee's own journey was cut short. During a mental health crisis, he reached out for help, not to the police, but to his trusted team at the Paterson Healing Collective and his family. Yet despite their readiness to support him, systemic barriers prevented their intervention. On March 3rd, a little over a year ago, 2023, in the throes of his vulnerability, Najee was fatally shot by police. His death is a reminder of the critical need for a new approach, an approach where community safety is led by those who understand its heart, the community. We know that when law enforcement is involved, the outcomes rarely bring the healing needed for those most in need. The community has been and should continue to be central to strategies that keep our community safe. Our current system, deeply rooted in punitive measures, as we've heard earlier, perpetuates cycles of violence and trauma, failing to address the foundational causes of conflict within our society. Today, as we stand together, we envision a new path forward, illuminated by the promise of strategies that nurture rather than break, and support rather than suppress. Today, I'm here to speak to the fact that across our nation, communities face severe impacts of violence and the trauma that accompanies it. However, there is hope in the successful outcomes of community-based strategies like community violence intervention. These interventions, which empower and support communities, have effectively reduced violence and saved lives. We have witnessed the transformative effects of community-led efforts in preventing violence through methods such as street outreach, conflict mediation, trauma-informed care, and job training. These approaches address the core factors that fuel violence, guiding individuals away from increased risk factors and towards enhanced protective factors in healing. These programs are not abstract theories, right? They are proven solutions. We can look to places like Newark, New Jersey, where the community is experiencing a 60-year low in homicides.
Without the police.
that say that. We can look at Detroit, where in 2 parts of the city served by organizations Detroit Friends and Family and Force Detroit, we've seen a reduction in violence at approximately 50 and 70% respectively. When we invest in our communities, we invest in solutions that work.
That's right.
Federal legislation, like the People's Response Act and the Break the Cycle Act, are not just legislative proposals, they are lifelines for our communities. The People's Response Act aims to establish a new division of community safety within the Department of Health and Human Services to fund evidence-informed interventions that champion safety across our nation. Similarly, the Break the Cycle of Violence Act proposes the creation of an Office of Community Violence Intervention, focusing on nurturing a workforce dedicated to peace and funding programs that mend our communities. Additionally, we should fund and allocate more dollars to public health agencies. Violence is a public health issue. At least we talk about it that way. So we should be supporting the CDC and investing into NIH to support community-led public safety approaches, understanding that violence is a public health issue and it requires a comprehensive evidence-based response. By confronting social determinants like poverty, inequality, limited access to resources, we can foster safer and healthier communities. At its heart, community violence intervention and community-based public safety strategies aim to address the root causes of violence, the systemic inequalities and injustices that perpetuate cycles of harm and trauma. This approach recognizes that violence is not merely a criminal issue, but a symptom of a broader societal challenge that needs a holistic solution. As we push for laws like the PRA, Mental Health and Justice Act, Break the Cycle of Violence Act, we have to remember that our efforts extend beyond legislative success. This is a call to action to continue to join and form coalitions, elevating the voices of impacted communities, and ensuring our leaders uphold their public safety and justice commitments. In conclusion, I want to thank legislators present here today who have acknowledged that we need to do things differently. But I also want to implore other legislators to consider the evidence, listen to community insights, and invest in proven solutions. I can't say that enough, y'all. These solutions work, and we should be investing in them. Together, we can create a future where everyone can live with a feeling of safety that just isn't rooted in the absence of violence, but is grounded in the presence of well-being. Thank you.
That's right.
Next, I would like to invite up Moms Rising. Reese?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Reyes, and I will be speaking on behalf of Ruth. I am with Moms Rising, and we are an online and on-the-ground organization of more than 1 million mothers and their families. I want to thank our colleagues in the Community Safety Working Group and the elected leaders and families and community members with us today. At Moms Rising, we know it's past time to reimagine public safety and create a crisis response that are appropriate and equipped to meet the needs of our communities. Our current approach to public safety is not working for moms and children, for families, and particularly not for Black and Brown communities, which have been devastated by systemic disinvestment, mental health, and substance use crises, and criminalization. Too often, the families of police killings include mothers and the family members of those lives who were taken too soon and under violent circumstances. We grieve for the families of Ayanna Stanley Jones, who was just 7 years old, Tamir Rice, who's only 12, Michael Brown, who was only 18, and Laquan McDonald, who was only 17 when they were murdered by police. We grieve for the fathers, like Dewante Wright, mothers like Lawana Phillips, daughters like Breonna Taylor, and sons like Elijah McClain and Ryan Gaynor, all gone too soon. We must stop grieving and start making meaningful change. Reimagining public safety is a matter of life and death, and making this change will require action from all of us. Together, we must replace the instinct to criminalize with an instinct to be thoughtful and strategic, and to adopt solutions rooted in providing appropriate care and response. Too often, the approaches we use today have devastating and deadly results, particularly for the youth, people living with disabilities, and communities of color. This harm is taking place in rural areas as well as in urban communities. We are bearing witness to the rapid increase in police violence in rural areas, including places like Kentucky, where police killings have occurred at higher rates, largely without national attention. This is a public health crisis, and we have to innovate. People with untreated mental health disorders are 16 times more likely to be killed during police encounters than people without mental health disorders who are approached or stopped by law enforcement. We can and must do better. We must not allow another community member in crisis to be harmed in their moment of greatest need. Every community deserves to feel safe and have systems that can deliver the adequate health-based response our communities need. So today, Moms Rising is proud to stand with this incredible community to advocate for approaches that are equitable, health-centered, and preventative. We will work with you all to stop violence and harm before it occurs and to ensure every community has what it needs to flourish. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Oh. And now, time for closing remarks from Samara Jones.
Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing today? Good. Y'all hot? It's a little hot out here, right? Yes, it's a great, perfect day for everyone to come out and to show up for these amazing bills. We want to thank everyone, first and foremost, our legislators, Congresswoman Bush, Congresswoman Pressley, and Congresswoman Porter, who showed up and out today and who have been showing out for the people of this nation. The bills that they brought today are bills that focus on humanity. We're here today because we have a shared vision, a new vision, one that prioritizes people over profits.
Yes.
Bills like the People's Response Act, Counselors Over Criminalization, and the Mental Health Response all speak to the humanity that our democracy needs. We also need champions like Congresswoman Bush and Congresswoman Pressley and Porter, who have shown up today and continue to show up for people. And we need to reach across the aisle. We need to reach all across, because these are not partisan issues. Safety should not be a partisan issue. We need to be looking at things that work, things that people want. And so with that, we'll conclude today. If anyone has any questions for our wonderful presenters, please, we'll be hanging out and we will be around. But thank you all so much for everything that you have done today and for all of the work that you are doing on the ground to make sure that these bills become a reality. It takes more than just saying, it takes action and it takes doing. So thank you all so much for today.
Thank you.